Good afternoon, everyone. You're on the Unsaid show that comes on every Monday from 1 to 2. We talk about topics that are unsaid, and we love to hear your voices and what you think about our topics. I have here in the studio, before I talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is a quite interesting subject, I have on this would be my left, right? Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Sara Al Mawali.
Hi everyone, this is Sahar Salmanian.
And I'm Tamsyn Pereira.
So we're here every Monday, as I said. We talk about different topics. Today we're going to talk about vulnerability. So if you guys don't know what it is, or maybe you go through it but you don't know the name exactly, stay tuned and we're going to talk about everything to do about why it's a weakness or why it's a strength or why it's needed and why it's important in our life to understand what it is exactly. We'll come back after this little break.
This is Oman FM.
So we're talking about vulnerability today. Give us a call and tell us what you think about it on the numbers. I'll give it to you right now.
24949493.
As you see, I have not memorized the number yet. But anyhow, one day.
One day.
Give us a call. We'd love to hear what you think about it. We're going to be talking about it right now, but we'd love to hear your stories with vulnerability. So, Sara, what is vulnerability to you? What do you think? I mean, we've read so many definitions about it. Historic ones, Roman ones, modern ones. But to you, what is vulnerability?
To me, vulnerability means being able to be opened, being able to open up and be your true self, to be able to be seen and valued no matter what you say. That's what vulnerability means to me.
It's interesting. What about Sahar?
I agree with Sarah. To me, vulnerability is willingly taking the risk to reveal how you feel, what you think, and what you need and want.
So today is the first day you wear your glasses on our show. Is that a bit of vulnerability? Because you're a bit hesitant in the beginning. How does it make you feel?
That I have to wear.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, what about you, Tam?
Well, added on to what Sara and Sahar said, I think being vulnerable doesn't actually have to be a weakness. Like, you're being exposed to the potential of someone harming you based on like physical or emotional sides, right? And being vulnerable is actually a strength. That's what I think, because you get to choose how you feel. And like I always say, emotions are not the problem. How you react to them is the issue. So if you're vulnerable and you open up and someone hurts you based on what you said, then you can go ahead and set boundaries. But we'll get into that in a bit.
That's cool. You told me there's a certain meaning to the word.
Oh yeah,
Can you tell us that
I
again?
looked it up just before getting here.
Yeah.
But it actually stems from the Latin word vulnus, which means wound. And it's something we've brought up in a lot of our previous episodes as well, where we compare an emotional wound to a physical wound. If you're cut or if you're hurt, you don't just slap a band-aid on there and then hope that everything's going to be okay, right? You need to take care of it, you put medicine on it, you check on it every now and then in the end you're left with a scar that kind of fades over time. So that's your trauma, a metaphor for trauma.
Very much. So all our episodes are actually on YouTube, and we did talk about wounds, and we talked about so many. I don't even know the number now. It's become quite a bit.
Yeah.
We're going into, I think, our maybe third season soon, right? So you could check it up on the FM YouTube channel. So vulnerability is somehow also connected sometimes with shame. So a lot of people are not vulnerable because they think, what if I show someone my weak side, because they think it's a weak side, and then it brings shame to me. And I think in our profession, sometimes we feel this. I'm saying it from my side. You guys can tell me what you think. That we're therapists. We're in mental health. We shouldn't show if we're feeling anxious or sad or any part of that, because that will our credibility might be less, or people might see us in a different way. As psychs and therapists and all of that right now, do you guys feel that way sometimes? Because I know that I do feel that way sometimes.
I definitely do. I feel like I constantly have to be this person that doesn't show emotions, especially in my sessions. Well, of course, in our sessions we have to be professional.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do get anxious before a session. Sometimes I do feel like maybe I need to do better, or I can do better. And I think that's a part of being vulnerable. It's acknowledging that you have these emotions
And working on it.
And not allowing it to kind of put you down, but also like, okay, what can I do to better myself?
And it's not, just to be clear, Sara does not take this into the session.
Yeah.
She works on it before and after, and always. We're always working on ourselves. So in the session, we always say we wear two hats. And the hat of the session is more a professional hat and being 100% with the client.
I think being a wounded healer is not a bad thing, because we are human beings like our clients, and maybe what they're sharing with us is exactly what we have been through before. As long as we are aware of our wounds and we know that we are working on them, I think that's a positive thing that we can add to our connection with our client.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you said we're wounded healers. That's a really nice term. But I see a lot of children below the age of 10 years of age. So I see it from a different perspective, where these little children look up to me or their parents, who their parents always are perceived as perfect people. So these children look at adults as, oh, you have it all together. And I'm like, no, trust me, we don't. We also have our troubles. But I will openly talk about my anxiety, or like on like my professional platform.
Yes.
But in sessions I also address this, and I say we also go through things. Like, everyone masks their emotions, and I think that's where vulnerability comes in, is just acknowledging that you do have issues, but that's separate from how you're dealing with professional clients as well.
Yes. So a lot of people also, and I know this for sure because I've gone through it quite a bit, they see if you talk about anything that's hurting you or bothering you, they look at you in kind of an astonished way. I've actually had people tell me, you shouldn't be like that because you are. I'm like, wow, that's like they're telling you be quiet don't feel any feel, don't be emotional, don't have any vulnerability, and this has nothing to do with work, this is to do with life, and you just have to be strong and everything for us. So it kind of sometimes feels like it's selfishness from people around you, and then you kind of, it clicks in your head and you go, oh, maybe I shouldn't, or maybe I should be quiet, but that's not right. You have the right to feel vulnerable. You have the right to feel not okay, but you need to go to the right person and talk to them about it, I'm guessing. Give us a call and tell us what you think about being vulnerable in front of certain people that think that you should only be strong all the time. And the number would be?
Call us on 24949493. I'll repeat that, 24949493.
Give us a call.
This is Oman FM.
So we're back on the Unsaid show. We're talking today about vulnerability and how it makes one feel. We talked earlier on some people feel shame when they're vulnerable and they feel, oh, now people are going to look at me in a different way. And we also talked about how people around us sometimes deal with us. So sometimes parents don't want to see you vulnerable because they feel worried. They go, oh my God, no, then she's not okay. Why is she going to? So we found a lot of cases, people were going through depression. They were going through very, very hard time of anxiety, depression, but they didn't talk about it. The whole idea of the show today is about also talking about it. Just, being open about how you feel to the right person. I was talking about this in the break. Sometimes we choose the wrong people to show our vulnerability to, because we think, I can just talk to this person too. And we get shocked and we don't understand what's happening. But then we realize this is not the right person to talk to about your vulnerability.
Right.
So you need to find the right person. Otherwise, you might shut down completely. And I think a lot of children might do that, right, Tam? Like, and Sara, like with the, probably don't want to, teens, they probably don't want to tell their parents things because they think, oh, then they're going to see me in a different way and they're giving me all this trust and all of that, but I'm actually struggling and I don't want to show them. And sometimes because they worry about their parents.
That's
They
true.
don't want to hurt them, so they hide it. Let's start with Sara and then also we'll ask Tam.
I do agree with you when you said that some children or even teenagers feel like if I open up to my parents, then I'm going to add that burden to them because I can tell that my parents are struggling, even if my parents have not told me anything. But I think something to keep in mind is that children understand body language, they notice these things. So I think it's also a conditioning, if you guys maybe can add to that as well, is I think as we grow older, we've been conditioned to keep things to ourselves, to not share things.
Exactly. And it's how maybe you're brought up sometimes.
Environment, the way you're brought up. What some people are not comfortable enough to open up about their feelings. Maybe parents are not comfortable to talk about how they feel, maybe because that's how they were raised.
Exactly.
So then the child feels that maybe it's not safe for me
So
to
maybe
open up.
that's a learned behavior.
It's a learned behavior.
So credibility again, right? Like maybe a parent thinks, oh, I'm not credible. I won't look like a good parent now. I'm not strong enough, so I won't show them all of that. And then we see some parents collapse if it's to do with their job, if it's to do with something they're going through. And people, nobody knows. Then one day they just go, oh, it's because I went there. And the children be like, you never told us. Of course, I'm talking about the older ones. You said something, I'm going to ask Tam also, that some kids know and notice. Some kids also, if they don't know, but they have this, they see something and they think, oh my God, maybe this is happening. And they live it. So they try and fix something, even though there's nothing really wrong, but they imagine it as well. So that's something also I think kids go through.
Yeah, I also want to add on another perspective because I do parent counseling sessions. A lot of times when I speak to parents, I'll hear them say, I don't understand why my child doesn't want to talk to me. They're clearly going through something. Why are they not opening up to me? Why are they in their room all the time? And then I always ask this one question to parents. Do you give your child the space, the emotional space to open up? Because a lot of times then when we do group sessions, I find out that the child has tried to open up to the parent and the parent has immediately shut them down or told them to get over it or to not cry or just really harmful advice, which has then caused the child who is trying to be vulnerable to shut down.
Yes.
And then they question why it's not. And I see a lot of great parenting techniques where they open up and they apologize to their child, which is not a bad thing to do, and then say, going forward, I'm going to give you that space to open up and talk to me as your parent. Because I think I read this post the other day. It made me think a lot about how we manage our parent-child relationships. They said never have your child, build a relationship with your child in such a way where your child is going to say, if something goes wrong, I hope I can talk to my parents and get advice on this, rather than them saying, I don't want to tell this to my parents because they're going to get mad at me.
Yes. Fear.
And that says a lot. So when you're giving your child the space to be vulnerable, even if you're not going to like what they're saying, please give them a space where they can be 100% vulnerable and deal with those emotions as well.
And
Sara, go on.
I was going to say, even when it comes to giving them the space, I think sometimes all they want is someone to listen to them. I think sometimes it's steering away from advice and just giving them that space to speak from their heart. And again, going back to, even if it's not something you want to hear, the advice can come maybe later.
Communication. Because what I'm hearing here is like good communication, good listening. So to be a good listener also is something important to have if you have someone who wants to talk about something, you're open. But also, do we notice that in couples, when somebody wants to open up about something, what does the other couple most likely do?
Yeah, we have this a lot in romantic relationships because, as you said, there is a fear that if I open up to my partner, maybe they view me in a different way, or later on they're going to use it against me, and that fear will stop me from being who I am at that moment. So I think it's a two-way street. We both need to, in a couple relationship, we both need to practice how to accept each other in our lowest and our highest moments, and learn how to support each other. Because if it happens once, then we can regain that trust that I can be vulnerable and at the same time lovable, likable, acceptable, and my partner knows how to support me. The other part of the romantic relationship, I think, is that this fear that if I see, and it happens mostly with men, if I see my husband is vulnerable, so how can I rely on him? So this misconception, misconception about power and being reliable, I think should be corrected. That my husband can be real to me, and I can be independent at that moment, and I rely on my own strengths to support him, and this can boost our trust and intimacy in the long run.
Good. So we're going to have a break, but stay tuned. We're going to talk about how relationships, different relationships with your boss, with your partner, with your family, how also you can deal with it in times of vulnerability. You can always call us on
24949493. I'll say it again, 24949493.
And have you noticed that I'm vulnerable? I'm showing you guys. I can't memorize the number. Okay, so call us back and we'll see you after the break.
This is Oman FM.
we're talking today about vulnerability. We talked about what it is and how to deal with it a bit and why it would happen to us. We talked about the fear, the shame that might happen to us. And we talked about relationships just before the break. I want to talk about vulnerability. Is it okay to be vulnerable in front of your boss? Or will that also make you look like you fuss a lot? And when we talk about vulnerability, we just want to clarify, it's not that person that keeps on fussing. That's not vulnerability, because people be like, oh, I'm going to be vulnerable today and all day, all night. No, it's some point that you say in your life and then you work on it. You don't just all day, all night. That's something else completely. That's negative thinking. That's other things. It's not vulnerability. So just to clarify the difference between two. And also, it's interesting, we could talk about this later. Resilience and vulnerability have a connection, by the way. We can talk about it later on. So, you have a boss, and this is awkward because I'm here, but anyhow, let's say you're somewhere else or someone, or you want to talk about it as if it's someone else. Okay. And can you be vulnerable to your boss? And can your boss be vulnerable to you? Is that right or wrong? And how can it be done?
That's an interesting question.
I can start.
All right.
Okay, so I think for those listening, the definition of vulnerability, once again, is to open up and tell someone your emotions with the risk of being potentially harmed physically or emotionally, right? So I think with your question, can you be open to your boss? I think for not just your boss, with anybody in your life, there's an extent, you get the choice. There's an extent to how much you want to open up.
So there's an extent.
To anything, I believe. So it's your choice. You have the power to open up.
We have a phone call.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, hello.
Hi, hello. How are you?
Good, thank you. This is Monique.
Hi, Monique. Welcome to the Unsaid show.
I just wanted to speak about a particular author and researcher who has said that there is a huge link with vulnerability and courage. And this person is Brené Brown. If anybody's interested in her work, she's amazing.
Yes, she is.
If you watch her TED Talks or anything that she's written. But yeah, as well as shame and empathy, it's very interesting how the more vulnerable you are, the more courageous you become. And it's amazing to actually know that there's so much research that has been done on this.
Thank you for sharing that. I hope everybody got that name. Do you want to say it again?
Yes, Brené Brown. So it's Brene Brown.
I vouch because I also like.
I've read her books and I've seen her TED Talks.
Yes.
So.
Thank you so much, Monique. So have you been vulnerable once in your life, or do you do it always? Many times. Has it helped you or not?
Yes. So I think for me, vulnerability fosters closer relationships. So obviously it's an issue of trust as well, who to trust.
Yes.
But I think from being vulnerable, I've learned, okay, these are the types of people who I feel I find trustworthy, and I think I'm a good judge of character.
Okay.
And my relationships have become so much closer with the people who I do trust.
I like that you said trust, because I wanted to ask you, has it happened once and it fired back not so well? It has. And you haven't gone back again, I'm guessing.
Lesson learned.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Have a lovely day.
I love that she said trust, because through vulnerability, you can also learn who to trust.
Yes.
You also know who you want to open up
The
to.
mask kind of falls off, right?
Maybe that's a good test for a relationship. If you be vulnerable with someone, it depends on the nature of your relationship. Then you can know if for the later I can be close to this person, for this area of my life, can I be closer to them and open up about my details of personal life or not?
What if on days of engagement they're like, yeah, I understand, and all of that, but when you actually get married, they're like, okay, just stop this, because I just did that for them. I always call the engagement part the marketing stage. So what do you do later? Because somebody could say, wow, this person changed. Although the first year is always the best year to know everything, of course.
Yeah. Although I feel like even in the first phase, you have to be yourself. There are things that no need to share. Let's say your past life, your past relationship. There is a boundary that you need to set in your relationship. But I feel like relationships are like human beings. They're changing constantly, and you need to go with that flow and always check in where we are. What do we need to add to our relationship? What do we need to remove from our relationship? And it takes so much conversation and communication.
Yeah. So I think it takes time to also understand this partner, and you can talk about things that are more, you know, deeper later on once you understand the person fully, because a lot of people are in this, you know, confusion. Do we tell them everything about our life or not? I think it comes naturally with circumstances later on, and it depends on the person, because sometimes the person say, why didn't you tell me before? But then there's an issue here. I mean, because with the relationship, it grows. So you grow that kind of relationship, that confidence, that trust in this. Tam, you wanted to say something about...
Oh no, it was your question. Your question that you asked, and everything that we just talked about answers your question with how much you need to open up to people. Just like our caller Monique said as well, it's based on how you build that trust with people. Sometimes you make a mistake, and that's how you learn. You open up to someone, and if they don't actually show you that they can trust they can be trusted, then you don't go back to them.
Set your boundaries.
Yeah, you set your boundaries with them.
Very good.
So even with your boss, I think that it goes both ways with how respect is a two-way street, and so is trust. And so you build that trust and you build that relationship. And if it's otherwise, then you know how much you need to share and what you need to share.
And I think it's also maybe in life, we have to understand this thing of trial and error. It doesn't mean if you fail, that's it, I'm not doing it again. And I won't trust anyone. I always hear this, I'm not trusting anyone anymore. It's that person.
Don't you see that a lot when people come in for therapy sessions and they're like, "Class therapy sucks. We don't want to do it
anymore." I've gone to that one and it didn't work out. I've gone that 1 hour and that's it. But it's trial and error, and this is how learning is. A human learns from trial and error. You can't always have everything go right on your way. It has to have sometimes a downfall, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're falling, but you learn, and that learning can be something in your history. You know, you look back and you think, okay, so I did this there, that didn't work, maybe I need to do this. So it's like you're studying yourself between, amongst people and amongst yourself as well. I think the most thing that I read about vulnerability is being vulnerable to yourself and understanding yourself first, then thinking, okay, now I can tell others. And that's something you need to identify first.
That's a very good point.
I feel like if you're able to be vulnerable with yourself and be true to yourself, you'll be able to do the same things with others. And this is something Brene Brown said that kind of stood out to me, especially what we were talking about. She says, staying vulnerable is a risk we have to take if we want to experience a connection, and that's even a connection with ourselves. So
without fear.
Without fear.
Yeah,
I love that.
Let's take a break. I think.
Well, before we go on break,
before the break, tell us the question.
I want to read out this DM question that we
awesome.
got. So for those of you who are too anxious to call us on 24949493, you can also DM us. So we just got a DM question, and it says, I find it difficult to express vulnerability in conversations without getting emotional. Is there any fix for this?
Shall we freeze that?
Yeah, we freeze it. We answer it after our break.
And DM us on Not Alone Oman. It's on Instagram or on any one of our accounts. Okay? So let's see you after, or let's hear you after the break.
This is Oman F. This is Oman FM.
Okay, we're on 90.4 FM Muscat, and we are on the Unsaid show. Before the break, we kind of talked about how, when you're vulnerable, how you should be. Should you be emotional or not? I think if you could say the question again. That was
Yeah.
asked.
So for anyone listening to our show, call us on 24949493, or you can DM us as well. So thank you to this person who has DM'd us and asked us this question. I find it difficult to express vulnerability in conversations without getting emotional. Is there any fix to it? My immediate response to that is, you're a human and you're going to feel emotions. That's not the issue. So I'm going to get your point of view on it. Do you think someone can express and be vulnerable without getting emotional?
I think it is actually, in a way, healthy to feel some form of emotion. It's because when you're being vulnerable, of course, you're going to feel emotional at some point. Because you're talking about something, maybe something deep. Maybe you're talking about something that happened in the past. Maybe you're talking about how you're feeling in the moment, and that could be sadness. So I think it's quite normal to feel emotional.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand, like maybe the person who asked the question means that you get too emotional that you cannot say what you want to say.
Or
Like
that.
sometimes you want to say something
You
and
start
then you start crying
or
and you
get
cannot
angry.
even say a word.
Depends, yeah.
Right. So I think for those cases, maybe it's good to reconnect with your body. Maybe there is an obstacle that you feel like, no, your body is not ready to open up. Your body is not ready to trust that person. So I think take your time to rebuild that trust, for yourself first, for your body,
Yes.
for your bodily feelings, and then try out.
So we talked about vulnerability, understanding yourself first before you go and tell someone else. I think when you do that and you have that calm down a bit, then you go and be vulnerable. That's, I think, the best way to go about it. But as my colleague said, you will feel, even if you're ready for it, you will feel a bit of emotion, but maybe not the full out blown one. If you kind of collect yourself, understand yourself first, then go and talk to the person, because something in the person could make you feel, why did I tell them? You get more upset with yourself, and then also that adds to the emotion. And some people are so upset about something that when they start crying, they start talking, they most likely will cry, or the other way around. When they start talking, they might get very, very angry. So understand yourself, understand that vulnerability, and then go and tell this person that you want to, talk to.
I have a follow-up question for Sahar. Do you think when someone is vulnerable like that they are already assuming the reaction of the other person, and that's what's holding them back from being open?
Most of the times we are so busy with the tough assumptions that we have, and that's why we believe them as a fact, not as an assumption.
Yeah.
That's very true. That's very true. We always worry about the receiving part.
Yeah.
How are they going to think about us? How are they going to react? So then they don't tell us, things. For example, if somebody's going to tell us. And then actually, in a way, it makes the situation worse. Because you think, what is wrong with the person? Why are they acting this way? And then you start feeling there's something odd. Although if the person told you, then you're like, okay, now I understand. But if the person doesn't tell you and you're just like, what is going on with this person? They're not telling us. They're just, and then you kind of lose the kind of passion of helping or listening as well. Because you feel like, okay, they don't want to talk about it, just go on in our life. And that makes a bigger wall and builds loads of blockage. And then
resentment.
It makes it so bad. So there's something quite interesting that Sara told me about a reality show.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to say what the reality show is, but we're going to talk about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was watching a reality show this weekend, and it was about building connections, or like finding a partner and building a connection. And I've realized a lot of them were just having shallow conversations, and they were finding it very difficult to open up. And in my head, I was like, it's not that hard to open up. Like, just talk. It starts with small things.
Yeah.
And then I realized that actually someone I know told me that it's not always easy to open up. It's not always easy for people to talk about deep things. Then I was like, yeah, it's true. Not everybody finds it easy to talk about deep things or
That's
things
very
that they
true.
went through, or maybe their traumas.
That's very true. I've had these moments where I talk to the screen too with anger. I'm like, what's wrong with them? Why don't they do this? Or if it's a serious, like, jump or move.
Just say something.
Go open
start.
it. It's gonna be worse. Like, I assume it's gonna be worse. So reality shows. I think we should do a whole show about reality shows.
Yes.
Because
I would love that.
Is like, there's like extra drama and a bit of. Chili and a bit of salt and a bit of lemon and a bit of sweetness. So that's a whole. We definitely need to talk about that, because sometimes they also react differently when they know they're on the screen. Some of them forget, but some of them are very calculated, right? They know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. There is types of vulnerabilities. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, I think types are so important, because sometimes we feel like vulnerability is only opening up to someone. But it's more than that. If you make a mistake and you need to apologize, that's part of vulnerability, to take accountability of your mistake. If you need to ask for help, and I see that in therapy sessions, that's part of accepting your vulnerable side, that I need help. I'm struggling and I'm not able to fix it by my own, so I need someone else's help. Another thing is asking for feedback. Asking others, how do you think about me? And I think that's a good thing in workplace, to be vulnerable, to listen to criticisms, even if you don't accept them. But asking it, I think, is very important.
That's very good points. Yes. Tam, do you think they're useful?
I had a funny story because, we were talking about who we need to open up to. And I think at different times, I've started practicing not saying I'm fine when someone says, how are you? And I think I've gone a little overboard
Your friends are
sometimes.
like, we don't want to know.
Like the perfume kiosk guy at the mall didn't need to hear that my day was not good. But he said, oh, do you want to try a tester? And I was like, and he said, hey, how are you? And I said, you know what? I'm not okay. Like this blah, blah, blah. And I ranted for like a few seconds, and I said, no, actually, I don't want the perfume, and walked away.
And you didn't get the perfume.
And I realized that that person was so uncomfortable with the fact that I said I'm not fine, that I didn't give a generic response of just saying, I'm good. Because I think a lot of times when we pass by people and we say, hey, how are you? I don't think half of us are even listening to the other person's response. And so you guys should all try this. The next time someone says, how are you? Give them a genuine response. And you don't owe anyone an explanation. Just be like, I'm not great, but I'll be fine.
Yes,
and that's fine. That's enough. But people are so used to hearing, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm fine.
When in reality, you're not good.
That's true. That's
And
true.
you hear that in
and
the
you get
session.
shocked, right? You're like,
Yeah.
no, she's supposed to say I'm good. What's going on?
I
In a
want to know
session.
more.
Yeah, even in sessions when you'd ask someone like, how are you? They'd be like, I'm fine, but it's obviously you don't seem
Because
fine.
that's what you say, right?
Yeah.
And then you just think, okay. And you know what the awkward part is, when you have someone who's passed away and you ask them, how are you doing? But you're like, I don't know what to ask. You know, kind of lost. And I think sometimes I personally use this, I know most likely you're not doing okay, but I hope you will be doing okay, kind of thing. Because honestly, when you tell someone and they go, yeah, we're okay, but how can they be? But they also don't know how to deal with that emotion. That emotion itself is very difficult to deal with. Let's go for a break, and it'll be our last part. And I'm really liking this, episode about vulnerability. So give us a call. You have still a chance, and it's on.
Call us.
24949493. I'll say it again, 24949493.
This is Oman FM. This is Oman FM.
So sadly, this is the last part of our show. We're going to just round up the ideas that we talked about today. So we talked about vulnerability. We talked about...
Vulnerability in relationships and types of vulnerability.
Exactly.
In children and family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the types of vulnerability as well.
Yeah.
And also with how people tend to make assumptions all the time when they're trying to be vulnerable.
Exactly. And the emotions that come with the vulnerability. Because maybe a lot of people don't even know that this is vulnerability, by the way. They must just think, oh, this is an uncomfortable feeling. But it actually has a name, guys. And this is what it is. Before we finish, I just want to talk about resilience and vulnerability. Do you guys see a link between, or is it like a yin and yang kind of thing? Resilience and vulnerability.
Well, earlier we got a call from someone named Monique, and she said with how Brené Brown says the strength in vulnerability, right? So the more you do it, the more you kind of build up on resilience. You don't just snap your fingers and get resilience. You build on it, just like trust. So you trust yourself to be vulnerable with people, and that's how you build resilience, and you get stronger. And then you get to also choose who you want to be vulnerable with and who you don't want to be vulnerable with. And that's so important.
So resilience, these are the positive parts, because we said shame, fear, there's also resilience, there's also confidence, there's also being comfortable with yourself, courage. So everything has a positive and a negative to it. You have the choice to choose, and maybe it will be, sometimes your choice won't be right, but you just try again. So
also,
on that note,
And also I wanted to share with you guys that sometimes being vulnerable is uncomfortable and it is awkward.
Very true.
But it is necessary to build relationships with yourself and with the people around you, and to not shut yourself off just because it's uncomfortable.
With the right people.
With the right people.
Yes.
So give yourself a chance.
Yeah.
People will surprise you.
Actually, it's interesting that it's proven when you are vulnerable, you are experiencing a kind of anxiety, but it's less than covering up your emotions and not being who you are.
Yeah.
So I think taking the risk to be yourself is worth it.
It's like a bit like a roller coaster. You're building, going up to the top, and then you're like, is it going to be good or bad? Good or bad? So free fall kind of thing. So if you think of it that way, it might give it more of an explanation. Anyhow, we loved this show, I think, today.
It's a good
going
topic.
to see you again on Monday. You can send us ideas of what you want us to talk about. We're open to that. DM us. Tell us what you're thinking about. We're always, on Reach on our Not Alone page. In the end, we'll have a last word to say. Yes, Sarah?
Please be vulnerable. Give yourself a chance.
I think you deserve to be you, first of all, to yourself, and then others who you trust.
I think a really good activity would be, like Sahar said, you being vulnerable to yourself. Stand in front of a mirror and practice what you're going to say. Acknowledge your own feelings, validate yourself, and then practice who you want to tell, who else you want to tell.
Yeah. Take that risk, and hopefully it'll be a good risk, but choose the right people to be vulnerable to. And don't forget to be vulnerable to yourself first. Before we say goodbye, we have a famous saying. I hope you guys know it by now. There's two things that we do again and again. So the show starts with a specific song. I want to put that as a quiz, actually. And maybe, actually, when you get it right, maybe you guys can be a guest here. So let's try that out. Maybe we could do that.
Nice.
And we always say that change begins with you. Have a blessed day and look after yourself. And always stay tuned to the Unsaid show.